The King of the Battlefield Chapter 201. Chapter 201, Hell King, 2. Translation, Nadu. Edit, Sefter. Muyung conquered all of the towers in Hell Path. 44 towers. In addition, he had forced the 44 owners to surrender, and stood alone on top. Then, the top of all the towers started to heat up and produce red light, and shot beams up into the sky. Afterwards, the view of the sky changed. As he looked up at the sky, he saw the real world. Hell Path was starting to connect completely with the real world. Plus the rank of Sword Master skill has increased. AS. Plus achievement effect Sword God/Sword Ghost strength has been added. Plus achievement effect Slayer of Kings has been added. Plus King's Army, stats of all the soldiers under your command plus 10. Plus 1 random equipment currently worn by King Slayer is taken. Plus you have gained Night King's Greaves. There were so many messages cluttering up his vision. Muyung read each and every one carefully. That was because there was nothing he could afford to disregard. First, as he finished the Slayer of Kings, 2 achievement effects had been added. Sword God/Sword Ghost Strength, and Slayer of Kings. Muyung immediately opened his status viewer. Then, as the status viewer popped up, he looked at the added achievement effects. Achievement effect. Sword God/Sword Ghost Strength, you become a Sword God or a Sword Ghost. Slayer of Kings, S++, Intelligence and Wisdom plus 50, Mantra effect. In the case of the Slayer of Kings, significant stats were added. Although he had just earned 2 achievement effects, he felt like his body was overflowing with power. Furthermore, it's an achievement effect that hasn't evolved. Sword God/Sword Ghost Strength was an effect that was yet uncertain. When he becomes a Sword God or a Sword Ghost, the effect would appear. The problem was that he was unsure whether he would become a Sword God or a Sword Ghost when he is faced with a situation. There had been a few continuous achievements like this in the past as well. And when those were restored with all their true strength, they obtained an unimaginable effect. Sword God/Sword Ghost. Like the name, he was excited to see as what sort of form it would be expressed. As the achievement was added, he would soon be able to exhibit it. The Slayer of Kings effect was also eye-catching. King's Mantra. In short, it was a king's language. It seemed like it was a similar effect to the dragon language. It meant that whatever Muyung said, would be enforced as if they were the words of a king. He never thought he would gain the power of words. Although he had met a man named Bug in the underground arena who had the power of dragon language, beside him, it was a rare strength that not many would have. Additionally, I have completed multiple continuous achievements at once. As he conquered Hell Path, he was acknowledged as the king. Ha! Not a demon king but a Hell Path king. He couldn't help but laugh. He couldn't feel any sense of disharmony. Like this, there wouldn't be many people who had a title that fit them that well. The King's Army effect strengthened specters. In addition, one of King Slayer's equipments was received. Night King's Greaves. Currently, Muyung was wearing Greaves of Destruction, Baron. But, because the Baron's condition for activation was difficult to meet, he was unable to really use it. In that sense, the newly obtained Greaves weren't bad. Muyung looked at the Greaves that was created in mid-air with an unknown metal material. Name, Night King's Greaves. Rank, S++. Durability, Infinite. Classification, Greaves. Effect, they are the Greaves the Night King, King Slayer uses. It is made of God's metal. God's blacksmithos when created it. Plus all stats plus 40. Plus it never breaks. Plus a token of faith and loyalty. It gives a strong sense of trust to someone. It was a completely simple explanation. However, that was enough. The importance of all stats was already well known, and for it to have infinite durability meant that he could use it whenever there was a dangerous situation. He currently didn't have a use for the token of faith and loyalty, but it wasn't bad to have such a continuous effect. Rather, he could draw a positive effect while others didn't notice. It was as if a small snowflake rolled up to slowly become a snowball. And then, king of the world. The last continuous achievement. Become a true king by conquering more than half of the world. Muyeong rubbed his chin. It was interesting to see that King Slayer was part of the reward. It means that he would be able to utilize King Slayer himself. He never thought he would be able to control one of the Masters of Darkness. But, to complete this achievement, he needed to beat numerous demon gods. That meant he still had a long way to go. Muyeong checked the updated status viewer. It seemed like there had been significant changes, and he wanted to make sure he knew them well. Stats. Strength 665, 368 plus 297, Agility 619, 357 plus 262. Stamina 629, 371 plus 258, Intelligence 633, 325 plus 308. Wisdom 648, 335 plus 313, Fighting Aura 551, 313 plus 238. Magic Resistance 613, 165 plus 448, Spirit Ability 608, 380 plus 228. Evil Tendency 609, 381 plus 228, True. Divine Power 644, 466 plus 178, True. Fire Attributes 588, 410 plus 178. Total Level, 631. Special Notes, Lucifer's strength is sealed. You have succeeded Gabriel's strength. You are creating Muyeong's sword. The god-killing spear is engraved in your heart. Most stats were over 600. Of course, it would have been impossible without the help of supplementary stats, but they were stats Muyeong had earned. Therefore, you could say they were Muyeong's strength. Even in the past, he had rarely seen anyone with a total of 600 stats. This meant that Muyeong was truly humanity's strongest person. Even the Dragon Lord Hansung was no match for Muyeong. Even if his dragon fought with him. However, he still wasn't transcendent. It was because he had not experienced the awakening ceremony to become transcendent. The awakening ceremony. Huge guilds and clans said that the way you see the world would change once you completed this ceremony. All transcendents, or demon gods, also recognize others who had gone through the awakening ceremony. In other words, it meant that they were approaching the truth of the world. He sort of knew the reason why he still hadn't experienced the ceremony, even though his stats were enough for him to become a transcendent. Pure stats. However, he couldn't do much about pure stats. No matter how quickly Muyeong became stronger, it wasn't enough to overturn time. So, he used equipment to become stronger faster. Now, it was time to concentrate on raising his pure stats. And that could be naturally accomplished if he walked the path of a king. Grrrrrrr. It was at that moment. When Muyeong had checked everything, something unexpected occurred. In the middle of the 44 towers, a 45th tower had risen. Oh, king! The newly appointed true king of Hell Path. The nine-tailed foxes were the first to kneel. Then, numerous specters in Hell Path also showed their loyalty. Muyeong climbed up the 45th tower. When he reached the top floor, the world changed. A priest and paladins were in front of him. Muyeong didn't even pay attention to them. Instead, his eyes were focused on the sword that was held by one of them. Although the sword didn't seem unique. Seeing how rusty it was, it seemed like it was really old. However, another feature was contained in the sword. The power to bring specters into reality. The power to materialize the specters and to maintain their power. In fact, the specters around Muyong had become materialized, and were pressuring the priest and the paladins. Having a body meant that much physical power could be wielded. It was no different than Muyong earning 44,000 strong monsters. Eat it! Anguish ate the sword. Then, Muyong turned his gaze to the outside world. 45 towers were rising from different areas of the noble castle. The boundary between hell path and reality has been broken. For the place to even be noble castle. A smile slowly appeared on Muyong's face. The title Hell Path King. Like the title, Muyong was planning to bring hell to the noble castle. He thought about what he was going to do, but then realized that he didn't even need to think about it. I'll take Eli Sargo. At first, he was planning to go through a process. By completing the trial of the advance clan has given him, he was planning to get closer to the seal of Eli Sargo. However, by going to Hell Path, his plans had changed. As he had earned the title of the ruler of Hell Path, he no longer needed to be cautious. This place was Noble Castle. The heart of the Rain clan. It wasn't even invading from the outside, but attacking the enemy from the inside. How could he possibly just pass that up? It was the perfect opportunity. The kind of opportunity that was hard to come across. Who are you? Are you a devil? Or, if you want to live, don't look, don't listen, and stay where you are. That was when Muyong turned his gaze to the priest. However, that was all. There was no need to really do anything to the priest of Malalan. Rather, he was the person who could tell Muyong's story by being the one who witnessed it. Although Muyong told him to not look and listen, humans are prone to do what they are told not to. Swoosh! Swoosh! Muyong dragged Anguish on the floor. With that sound, the monsters started to move. And Muyong spread his wings wide. He went out of the tower and, in the midst of the chaos, he spoke quietly. From now on, we will start conquering. Taken noticed something different. No, not just Taken. Everyone in Noble Castle naturally looked up to the sky. A man with 6 wings. He was like the depiction of hell. A huge red star appeared above him. In the moment he appeared, the sky was hidden. Instead of the sky, Hell Path was spread out in the air. The merging of worlds. Hell Path became reality, and reality became Hell Path. Gray. Monsters emerged from all of the towers. The number seemed to be at least a few thousand. What are these monsters? They are all monsters I have never seen before. It was the fear of the unknown. It was more terrifying because they had to face things they had never experienced. People were hesitant. No one could easily make a move. Muyong. Although no one said it out loud, there was one who called for him. Taken immediately joined the line while he held his sword. Then, Muyong poured 7,777 feathers down from mid-air. His whole body was burning magnificently with the holy flame. That appearance was enough to make others think of the King of Hell Path. Kneel and surrender. I will not kill those who kneel. He activated King's language, which had a strong force. It was the Hell Path King's final invitation, and his order. Although it wasn't loud, everyone heard it. And they were able to feel a strength that they could not resist. One by one, the people who were filled with fear began to kneel. Chapter 202, Hell King, 3. Translation, Nadu. Edit, Sefter. The people couldn't unite. They couldn't cooperate, and couldn't trust each other. After Rain Gun's death, the increased punishment and chaos created a wall amongst themselves. From the beginning, the Rain clan going their own way about Noble Castle also didn't help. They only knew how to build their own clan, they never did anything in the interests of the whole Noble Castle. Also, it was the first time that Noble Castle had been invaded from the inside. This was something that had originated from the heart of the city. More than anything, they needed to quickly react, but the speed with which Muyong acted was too fast. Looking at the horrific scene that was in front of him, Alan shuddered with his whole body. It's hell. This is hell. Endless screams were heard. There were sounds of buildings burning and collapsing as they turned to ashes. The world was red, and even the towers that reached the sky seemed like symbols of a curse. Even the paladins, who had experienced all kinds of training, were lost for words. What could they say? The monsters didn't kill those who kneeled. However, those who didn't were ruthlessly slaughtered, without any hesitation. Seeing the abdomens of the resistors split open and their intestines and other internal organs pouring out didn't seem real to the paladins. It seemed more like hell than the real world. Shouldn't we help them? Alan tried his best to speak from his heart. He felt like he needed to help. He was a rank 1 priest, and followed the holy words to always live by helping others. However, his feet didn't move, and he was barely able to get the words out. The paladins weren't too enthusiastic either. It is better to return to Malalan and get their help. I don't want to admit it, but with just us, it wouldn't be much of a help. It was obvious for the paladins to be dissuasive. Trying to beat a rock with an egg? No. They weren't even eggs. If they could compare it, it was more like trying to beat a rock with bubbles. If you were to hit an egg against a rock, there would at least be traces left, but bubbles just popped. They couldn't leave a trace. How can we leave this place and ask for relief? Alan's voice sounded as if there was no hope. They couldn't even leave. They were trapped inside a tower. Even if they were to try and leave, they would need to fight against the monsters. At least, the kids. I would like to save at least the kids. Alan defined the man with the 6 wings as evil. He started the war and was currently carrying out a massacre. Mercy to those who kneel? Just because he showed that one mercy, doesn't mean what he did could be justified. Either way, he was an invader. That truth didn't change no matter what reason he might have. The monsters only let live those who kneeled. Besides them, they didn't differentiate between an adult or a child. It was the hurdle of simple commands. Alan. I won't tell everyone to follow me. Even it's just me, I'll go. Priest Alan tried to do what was right. His duties as a priest of Malalan, as an adult. If he didn't do it himself, it would really become hell. Without any hope, order, or affection towards one another. He didn't want it to become that sort of a world. This was what all the priests of Malalan wanted. Even if there was only evil in this world, he wanted to be good. This desire was the essential virtue of priests. I will not abide by evil. Alan moved. Myung also didn't like just complying and accepting. This was also the same. He wanted the Rain clan and the other clans to resist and to fight back a bit more. Only then could he feel that the idea of becoming everyone's enemy was worthy. Raising their desires. Desires were hope. It was possible to become strong at a tremendous speed if the desire to live was combined with the desire to become stronger. Did Myung become stronger because he was Myung? No. He made that much of an effort to become strong. Of course, one couldn't overlook the amount of information he possessed, but there were plenty who had lots of information like Myung. This happened because they didn't share what they knew, and tried to pursue their own gains. Myung was planning to rectify this malign sentiment. To do this, small moves weren't enough. Even if this was extreme, there needed to be someone like him. In the past, Dragon Lord Hansung had that sort of role, but he failed. Hansung, his heart wasn't tough enough. If he was a bit harsher. If he knew how to withstand things a bit longer. Hansung would have succeeded in the transformation. He would have united humanity and gained the strength to fight against evil. However, Hansung wasn't harsh enough. He wasn't willing to start a war against other humans, and through their blood, walk the darkened path. On the other hand, I'm different. Myung would walk that path. Consequently, he was planning to become not just the demon god's enemy. Everyone's enemy. The path Muyang wanted to walk was long and dangerous. It was the path that no one would recognize or care to take, a path he would walk alone. As it was something only Muyang could do. The first thing I need to do is release the knowledge. The noble castle was especially closed up. The amount of information that was concealed in this place was beyond one's imagination. That was how places like the Advance Clan's 6 sages were created. There was so much information that even they didn't know all of what was inside. Therefore, the first place Muyang headed to was the Advance Clan. As he stretched his hand, with a zap-like sound, he was able to smell something burning. The Advance Clan had activated a barrier. A comprehensive defensive barrier. It's funny. However, to Muyang, it just seemed like a cute act. It could be easily removed if he called Xiao Yunzi. Her extensive ability to analyze enabled her to be the first to find out about the 45th Tower and Hell Path. But, Muyang didn't call Yunzi. Instead, he raised his hand and increased the size of his holy flame. Krayok. The holy flame became a large sphere. Its size slowly increased. Then, a huge seismic change occurred. He wasn't sure if it was caused by someone, but the ground sprang up and shot towards the holy flame. In that state, Muyang threw the sphere of holy flame towards the Advance Clan. This was the symbol of the Advance Clan. As the protective barrier was touched by the sphere, a huge sound was created. The barrier that was made up of exactly 37 layers started to peel one by one. 1, 2, 3. In an instant, he peeled off over 30 layers. The eyes of those who were within the barrier were widened. As if they couldn't believe it. Your crime is, being bystanders. When the world collapsed, and all the heroes were dying off, the Advance Clan didn't do anything. They remained idle. Although they were smart, they didn't use their knowledge to help the world. They wasted their time buried in their studies. He wasn't maligning research itself. However, how could they just bury the results of their research and the knowledge they found without using them? Because of their findings, the devils were able to gain power instead. A few demon kings and demon gods became interested in the information the Advance Clan had and took it from them. Humanity had a much more difficult time due to this. It was better for them to not exist if that was the case. Krayok. The 37 layers of the barrier were all destroyed. However, the sphere of holy flame didn't lose its strength at all. It then crashed into the Advance Clan's castle and annihilated everything in its surroundings. People, buildings, the ground, and everything. However, the things that were buried underground remained. Muyang dug up 6 sages. 6 sages. A vault of great knowledge. Of course, just digging it up wouldn't stop it from being buried again. He needed someone to be furious about seeing this. Someone who was strong, but also had the confidence of the public. Stop, you devil! Malalan's priest appeared. It seemed like he lost his temper after seeing the Advance Clan disappear in an instant. Are people's lives really that insignificant to you? It's insignificant. It was really insignificant. The thing that's called life, which fades away with just one gesture. When he was an assassin, and even now, the way of life seemed too light to Muyang. This weight would be the same for a lifetime. Life is sacred. You can't think of life so easily. Are you trying to lecture me? Thud. Thud. Huge foxes with 9 tails appeared. A huge form that seemed to be easily the size of a 5-floor building. No one could stop its destructiveness, as it used its massive strength and fox beads. There were 5 of them. The 9-tailed foxes surrounded Alan and the paladins. Cray. And in the air, 7 bone dragons flew in the sky. The bone dragons helped other monsters to destroy things. Aren't you Banya? Well? How could you commit such a ruthless act? Alan realized that Muyang was Banya. Although he had probably never seen him before, his deductive reasoning was great. However, Muyang shook his head. I'm not Banya. Then, he continued. I'm Myung. Mu, which stands for nothing. Young, which stands for shadow. Although at first, he had the name Young, he had become Myung, the shadow of the world. Mu, Young. Alan thought about the name over and over. And did you say that I was ruthless? No. All people are cruel and evil. That is not so. Everyone always has a good side to them. Really? Then those things underground weren't done by people. After removing the clan, a few metal doors appeared that lead to the underground. They were metal doors that could even withstand Myung's attack. The things inside them couldn't be simple. The monsters opened one of the metal doors. Then, numerous decayed corpses were visible. For the sake of battle array research, they confined innocent people in this place. What? Skreek. Thump. Another metal door opened. This time the corpses of numerous animals and other species were visible. Are only the lives of humans precious? How could this? No, it isn't possible. Not with Malalan watching. Alan shook his head as if he couldn't believe his eyes. However, Myung just grinned. The monopolizing of information. That also means that it is possible to conceal information. The advance clan strictly remained as a spectator. Even so, no one was able to meddle with them. It was because the information they had was also part of their strength. Since they knew about others' weaknesses, how could people just easily meddle with them? Screech. Thud. The last met slow door. This time there weren't any corpses. However, inside it, there were hundreds of thousands of books that filled up the room, as well as a path to another floor below. If it was you, do you think you would use the powers you gained only for good? Information and knowledge are strong weapons compared to others. Such weapons lead a person's mind away and stain it. I won't be seduced. I will not fall for temptations of the devil. Alan had slightly lost his senses after seeing the genocide. It was quite a different appearance from a priest who needs to constantly be calm. If that is the case, then take them. From now on, it's your fight with me. I'm quite curious if you won't be stained by this power. Myung provoked Alan. He also placed a small suggestion. The king's language Myung could use allowed him to modify a person's mentality. Alan would thoroughly disclose this knowledge, and use it only for the people. Looking at his character, it was very unlikely he would use them for his own benefit. Myung spread his wings. And then, leisurely headed for another place. I won't be stained. I won't become evil like you. Alan's veins on his neck were raised as he screamed from the top of his lungs. Yes, he would be the prosecutor. Chapter 203, Hell King, End. Translation, Nadu. Edit, Sefter. Besides a few items that he needed to take from the library, Myung didn't really need the rest of the knowledge. Most were things he either already knew of, or couldn't use. However, it would have a different meaning to humanity. At the very least, if the library of the 6 sages were to be opened up, you could say that would be an advancement of 10 years. 10 years. To humanity, 10 years was truly a great number considering how dormant it was. Since he had left it to Alan, it had now left Myung's hands. There was something else which Myung was truly after. Elursigo. The ancient weapon, Elursigo. It was a weapon containing a great many hidden secrets. So, Myung was planning to take it for sure. To do this, Rain Clan. Myung's eyes turned to the direction of the Rain Clan. Rain Clan. The number 1 group of the noble castle. Their scale was massive, and they had numerous strong men and women. Certainly, compared to other places, the Rain Clan's resistance was stronger. The specters weren't able to easily move forward, and their feet were tied. However, after the rank 1 specters headed towards the Rain Clan, the situation slowly improved. Rank 1 specters. The 9-tailed foxes, Chung Langs and Song Songus. There were 3 kinds of specters that were considered rank 1 among the specters Muyeong controlled. The 2 Chunglangs and 3 Songsongas had overwhelming force, and had different skills from the 5 nine-tailed foxes. Growling Chunglangs. They were huge blue wolves. Wherever they went, they spread blue flames and looked like gatekeepers of hell. They were so fast that even Muyeong admired their speed. Songsongas looked like normal orangutans, but their strength was on another level. If they were to aggressively smack their body, a few buildings would get destroyed. If they were that strong, they could easily overturn a mountain. From afar, Muyeong just watched the Rain clan slowly fall. Already, those who weren't dead in the noble castle were all kneeling. They asked for mercy and turned their eyes away from the specters. All that remained were the Rain clan and a few others. However, as they weren't able to unite and fought separately, the future was already foreseeable. While the battles continued, Muyeong witnessed an outpouring of darkness. It wasn't from where the Rain clan was located. It was from completely the opposite side from that place. Awakening. This feeling was familiar to him. Someone had awakened. Although the current level of darkness was weak, its concentration was different. If there was that much concentrated strength, the future was clear. Muyeong gained a bit of interest. He spread his wings wide and headed towards the darkness. Ah! Ah! The young man was screaming from between half-destroyed houses. He seemed at most 18 years old. In front of him, were what appeared to be the corpses of his parents. Among them, there was also someone whom Muyeong was well aware of. Old Sword Jin Yul. Old Sword Jin Yul. He was an old man who was so strong that, although he wasn't among the top 10 people, he was still among the top 100 people. However, he lived in a small house after retiring due to old age. Even in the past, he was famous for his unyielding personality, and so no one was able to easily meddle with him. It seemed that personality had also manifested in front of the specters. Muyeong could see that he had rebelled fiercely from his broken-up sword, and blood that was scattered around him. A few dozen specters were also rolling around on the ground as they became ashes. And the young man seemed to be his child or pupil. Although Muyeong didn't know Old Sword well enough to know anything more about him, seeing how the young man was crying while holding his body, he could tell that they had a deep relationship. And throughout the young man's entire body, darkness was flowing out. A wrong awakening. If a person proceeds down a wrong path at the time of awakening, they would become unstable. If they are unable to handle the energy, they would explode. 100%, everyone would. Then, they overflow with power before becoming unstable. I'll kill you all. The enemies of my father and mother. Crunch. He ground his teeth as he stared at the specters. There were hundreds of rank 3 and rank 4 specters surrounding the place. The young man grabbed the broken sword of Old Sword. The order Muyeong commanded his specters to follow was very concise. Those who don't declare defeat, those who have not kneeled, kill them all. The young man didn't acknowledge any of those things. The specters moved to kill the young man according to Muyeong's orders. Specters with numerous tentacles, and specters that floated around in skull form. However, the dark energy that was within the young man's sword blocked all the specters' attacks. As if he was possessed, the young man wielded his sword. But, as he did so, his life source was depleting more quickly. By the time he killed all the specters, he would use up all his energy. It's a waste to let him go. Muyeong saw potential in the young man. He didn't understand how such a talent hadn't bloomed in the past. At least to him, the young man's face was unfamiliar. However, if he was about to bloom with that much darkness through a wrong awakening, you could say that his talent was extraordinary. Of course, it would be a waste for him to die right now. Thud. Muyeong landed on the ground. Instantly, the young man's sword turned towards Muyeong. Although he was blinded by revenge, it seemed like he instinctively knew that Muyeong was the cause of all this. clank, clang. However, his skills were too embarrassing to compare to Muyeong. Muyeong calmly stopped his attacks and then started to counter him. Push! Anguish stabbed his side and pierced through his leg muscle. Then, a powerful curse permeated the young man's body. Anguish had the powers of corruption and curse. And the powers were much more powerful than the darkness the young man possessed. By using the power of corruption and curse, Muyeong gathered up all of the young man's power of darkness and sealed it all in his heart. A temporary measure. Muyeong didn't remove the darkness inside him, as that power of darkness could actually become his strength. His heart beat as if it was going to explode, but instead, he regained his consciousness. Ah! You're weak. Both internally and externally, too weak. I'm not weak. If you weren't weak, why couldn't you protect them? The young man got up again. He wielded the sword uncontrollably at Muyeong. Thud. However, Muyeong didn't accept the young man's tantrum. As Muyeong kicked his chest, the young man rolled on the ground. You couldn't protect them because you are weak. Mother, father, kuh. Kuh. His eyes rolled back. He was crying bloody tears. It was a phenomenon where someone who is psychologically stressed becomes unable to contain their emotions. Muyeong approached the young man and touched near his heart. Afterwards, he forcefully synchronized his energy and spoke. The reason why your parents died and the reason why you are in this state is that they were all weak. It happened because they weren't able to face me. Muyeong gave him a goal. Even if he synchronized his energy, if the young man didn't have the will to live, he would die. The young man barely lifted his head. Then, looked towards Muyeong. Jin Jagun. I will kill you. The young man's name was Jin Jagun. He spoke his name, and declared he would kill Muyeong. Muyeong also introduced himself. I'm Muyeong. Also, as I'm the king of hell, if you want to face me once more, you need to become much stronger than now. The power of darkness, corruption, and curse all dominated his heart. However, because he mixed a bit of holy flame inside him, it neutralized the effect. What now remained was what the young man needed to do. If he was able to successfully awaken and develop his strength, he would have the fighting power to even be stronger than the top 10 humans. And Jin Jagun seemed to certainly have the potential to surpass everything. The eyes that were filled with revenge. Muyeong was the villain, and Jagun truly fitted to be called an avenger. Flap. Muyeong finished performing emergency measures and once again spread his wings. And flew towards the Rain clan. Jin Jagun continued to chase Muyeong, even while his whole body bled. It's a demon king's attack. Perhaps a demon god made his move. However, the 7 bone dragons that flew in the sky seemed somehow familiar. Maybe. The opinions were divided. But, they weren't in any situation to discuss it. Gah! Stop them. We can't let them break through any further. The specters continuously moved towards the Rain clan. As tens of thousands of specters burst in at once, the Rain clan wasn't able to respond effectively. The result was this. If they were to continue like this, the specters would be able to reach the head of the family. However, the specters couldn't help but stagger. It was because the chanter of the Rain clan, Rain Chung, has raised his favorite weapon, the high-angly sword. As one of the top 10 strongest people, he was like the last prince of the clan. Come! You freakish monsters! Whenever the high-angly sword flashed with light, one of the specters lost their head. Specters didn't leave a body when they died. They became ashes and left a bit of a trace on the ground. He was strong. Most specters couldn't even reach him. Ah! The chanter is making a path. Follow him. The remaining men also followed Rain Chung and clenched their weapons. Rain Chung was steadily pushing the monsters away and recovering the Rain clan's territory. Destroy the monsters. Push them further. Their spirits suddenly rose. The men who were dispersed started to join together, and the picture began to change. They were now seeing hope. The hope they could get rid of monsters like this. Grrrrrrr. It was then that a Chung Lang appeared. A huge blue wolf. When it appeared, it instantly killed men with its bite. With its sharp teeth, it pierced through their necks, and no weapon could pierce through the Chung Lang's skin. You bastard! Rain Chung wielded the high-angly sword. Certainly, unlike the other men, his sword was able to injure the Chung Lang's skin. Pshhh. The Chung Lang let out a snort. But it didn't step back. It rushed and began a head-on match with Rain Chung. The Chung Lang was slowly pushed back, but it wasn't that simple. Kaiaok. It was because another slightly smaller Chung Lang joined in and completely changed the situation. Gaak. You bastards! Rain Chung's shoulder was ripped off. Rain Chung lost his left shoulder. It was fortunate that he wasn't bitten on his neck, but if it continued like this, the result would be obvious. Let's help the chanter. Protect the chanter. The strong-spirited men joined in. They were elites. If they were to use their strength together, they should be able to drive away 2 Chung Langs. However, thud, thud. One by one they started to kneel. The cause was unknown. They suddenly lost their strength, and their eyes became drowsy. From afar, with swooshing sounds, people walked towards them. 5 beautiful women who looked like fairies. The odd scent produced by them took away all the strength from their bodies. And in the middle of them, a man who looked like a devil with 6 wings. Rain Chung recognized Myung. Banya. It was definitely the legitimate child who returned, Banya. However, seeing the current situation, he didn't seem like Banya. That appearance was not of a human. The person who created this whole situation. Hell, are you really the king of hell? Myung didn't even look at him, and just passed him by. Myung was after the family head's room. He was planning to use the head of the family as a hostage to find out where the sealed-up Elersigo was located. Klosh. After Myung passed by, the Chung Langs once again started to massacre the men. Rain Chung just closed his eyes. If there was hell in this world, this was it. Chapter 204, Truth, or 1. Translation, Nadu. Edit, Sefter. The head of the Rain clan was an old man. There were so many wrinkles that you wondered if he had any strength in his body, his skin so thin that you could see veins throughout his whole body. He seemed too shabby to be the absolute ruler of the noble castle. You could say he was someone who had been ruling for a long time, and who had not let go of his greed. A slave to his own authority. It was ugly. Myung couldn't understand if authority was really that good of a thing. Are you the cause of the disturbance? The old man spoke. Myung nodded his head, and made the 9-tailed foxes leave. The 9-tailed foxes politely bowed as they left the room. Swoosh! At that moment, Myung drew anguish. Even if he were to ask, the old man wouldn't answer. Myung wasn't planning to ask him nicely either. The age of the Rain clan would end here. Myung was planning to consume the monster of authority himself. It wouldn't be too late to get information about Elersigo afterward. What would you gain by deceiving everyone and causing a commotion in the noble castle? Everything. Tisk tisk. The old man clicked his tongue. Swaa. Thump. Thump. Then, 4 huge pillars were created around the room. The pillars seemed to represent a seal. You won't be gaining anything. You will die here. The old man asserted. Then, from in between the pillars, shadows emerged. The guardians that only protected the head of the family. The 18 warriors who were called the 18 disciples. Many things that were thought to be impossible were resolved by them, and the head of the family trusted them more than even his biological children. Their skills were unquestionable. If these 18 people were to unite, there wasn't an enemy who could win against them. The 18 disciples suddenly surrounded Muyang. They completely blocked off all opportunities for offense or retreat. "Child, it was a big mistake to face me alone. Or, would you like to beg for your life now?" The old man was relaxed, as if expecting something like this to happen. The old man said it was a big mistake for Muyang to come alone, and let the 9-tailed foxes leave. The 4 pillars could only be deactivated by the head of the family. Until then, no one could leave this place. So, from his point of view, Muyang was cornered. PSSH. However, a smile formed on Muyang's face. Then, a huge horn rose from Muyang's forehead. As the world slowed down and the old man was about to close his eyes, before the 18 disciples could raise their weapon to react, Muyang moved. There was a huge difference in their skills, but what was more, Muyang speeded up to become 64 times faster. Everyone there seemed slower than a snail to Muyang. Slash. First, Muyang pierced through the disciple who was to the right of him. He pulled out the sword, but no blood spilled. There wasn't a scream either. In the world that was 64 times faster, everything proceeded slowly. He sprang up from the ground and turned Anguish and stabbed their hearts, one by one. When Anguish had touched the hearts of all of the 18 disciples, Muyang stood in the middle. As he put Anguish away and the horn disappeared, the 18 disciples all spouted blood at once around Muyang. Swa-a-a-a-a-a-a. Instantly, Muyang's whole body was wet with blood. The 18 disciples all fell to their knees at once. Cold dead bodies. The 18 lives all perished together. This all happened in a blink of the old man's eyes. What the? The old man was taken back. He who was the owner and ruler of the impregnable fortress was shaken. The 18 disciples who he trusted so much. But, in front of Muyang's fighting power, they were no different than a tiger moth. To win against Muyang, it was better to have countless men, or one truly strong person. If you just had 18 decently strong people, they would only become Muyang's prey. The old man couldn't accept this reality. He could never in the world have expected to lose so easily. However, this was because the old man's eyes were closed. He was arrogant. He didn't need to keep others in check. As the impregnable fortress called the Noble Castle had never been shaken before, he thought Muyang would be the same level as those who he had faced in the past. This was his biggest mistake. If he had the eyes from when he was in his prime, he wouldn't have made such a mistake. Of course, even if that was the case, the results wouldn't have changed. You could dare to say Muyang was the strongest and worst enemy. Not just the Noble Castle, but Muyang knew about all the clans and cities, and was cold and decisive. Muyang was the one who could most easily and quickly destroy their foundation. As he now had an army to support him, you could say that the Noble Castle was unlucky to be the first one he attacked. What sorcery did you use? The 18 disciples, how? Accept it. Muyang continued to talk. You lost, and I won. Swoosh. Anguish cried, and the ruler of the Noble Castle lost. Muyang raised his head. The huge door that sealed Elersigo. It won't open. Although he tried to open the door using the handle, as expected, it wouldn't just open. He tried to burn it with his holy flame, but it didn't even leave a mark. It can't be opened with normal methods. Muyang rubbed his chin. As he turned his head, there was the head of the Rain clan. Muyang turned him into a living dead, and made him reveal all the information he had about Elersigo. And so, he was able to safely reach where the seal was placed. However, the Rain clan hasn't been able to access Elersigo for a long time. Now, Muyang had to do it. Through the devil's actions in the past, Muyang knew a way to release this seal. Lucifer. Muyang woke Lucifer up. After sensing the things that were on the other side of the sealed door, he spoke. I could feel a great sense of danger. Are you planning to awaken such things? Aren't you interested? A strong devil placed the seal himself. He seems to be closer to a demon god than a devil. For some reason, Lucifer was talkative. It meant that he was interested in the seal and Elersigo. However, he never knew a demon god had placed the seal himself. Myung just thought someone from ancient times placed the seal. Which demon god? He isn't a demon god of the Lemesitan. I'm not sure. He seems familiar, yet also different. For him to not be one of the demon gods of the 72 seats. However, Dantalian spoke as if he knew this place. To be exact, it wasn't Myung's words but something Seo Yunsi had said. However, didn't she say that Elersigo destroyed Earth? Myung was planning to find out the truth about this as well. Help me remove the seal. Either way, he needed to open the door in order to confirm these things. Myung asked for Lucifer's help. Lucifer pondered for a moment, then spoke to Myung. Although I don't like your tone, I am quite curious as well. For a demon god's strength to exist that I don't know of. Lucifer was originally one of the Nephilim. He was also of the highest order. And that was why he should know what was on the other side of the door. If Lucifer didn't know, you could say that the power on the other side of the door was truly unusual. Soon, an enormous amount of darkness formed on both of Myung's hands. Strength on a different level. It was Lucifer's godliness. In that state, Myung grabbed the handle. And started to pull with all his strength. Screech. Thump. The door that hadn't budged easily opened after Myung added Lucifer's strength. After opening the huge door, he moved swiftly. When he entered, he saw a huge room that stretched further than he could see. Within, there were endless rows of weapons in the form of spiders. Ancient weapons, Elersigo. They were those things. Those spider-like ancient weapons were Elersigo. However, the Elersigo didn't move at all. They were all in a dormant state. But, for some reason, Myung felt like he knew the way to activate them. It was a thought that instantly entered his mind when he came in. There are 6 parts. The Elersigo could be activated when the user was recognized. Myung moved, and placed his hands on top of the marbles that were in each corner of the room. When he placed his hand on a marble, a line was drawn around the room with a bridge of light. In total 6. After the hexagonal shape was drawn, the room was filled with bright lights. Also, in the middle of the room, a few dozen, then a few hundreds of different languages appeared. There were literally all the languages of the world. The languages spoken on the earth, and by the underworld creatures, as well as some languages that Myung didn't even know of. Among them, Myung tried to read the words that he could comprehend. Chapter 205, Truth, or, 2. Translation, Nadu. Edit, Sefter. A completely unexpected name popped up. For a moment, Myung wondered if he heard wrong, but he himself knew that that wasn't the case. However, it was strange. Wasn't Solomon someone who originally sealed the demon gods of the 72 seats and provided different systems for humanity? The fairies, the talismans in different areas, the masters of the darkness, and Merlin. There was no place where Solomon didn't have an influence. Through Solomon, humanity gained the power to endure. But, what was this scene that was in front of Myung's eyes right now? There was also something else that was strange. If Earth was that much destroyed, how did people come to the underworld? And without having any memories of war. Solomon is the king of wisdom. However, the answer he provided was sometimes cruel. Lucifer didn't say anything besides this. It seemed like he knew a lot more. However, he didn't try to talk about it. As if it was an unwritten rule, he seemed reluctant to discuss it. Soon, in the scene, the man who was believed to be Solomon opened his book. The book was Lemesitan. The book that was believed to now be in the hands of Baal was in Solomon's hands in the scene. Solomon opened Lemesitan and chanted a spell. Also Paulina. The magic that summons angels of time. It was different from the Alsu Paulina the demon gods were dying to find. From what he knew, the angels of time who were asleep within Lemegidon were all killed after demon gods appeared. Then, did that mean this was a time before the demon gods were summoned? Stop the time. Solomon spoke. Then, as if time was a lie, the world stopped. And in the areas that Solomon destroyed, another world was revealed. The underworld. Surprisingly, the remaining places became a part of the underworld. It became the path to the underworld. The rest of the world started to become contaminated. And within the stopped time, one by one, people were sucked into the underworld. The playback of the scene stopped there. Immediately afterward, another message popped up. Species-destroying weapon. A powerful tool that destroys the species of a set species value. Myung couldn't help but think about all this with extreme confusion. If it is Merlin, he should know more details about this. Solomon and Merlin were in a collaborative relationship. It was clear that he would know a lot more about this. However, there was no way to re-enter the Blue Temple once exited. For there to be a way, he would need to destroy the wall that protected the Blue Temple, but to do this, he needed to learn the transcendent magic of Lemegidon, Ars Nova. There could also be another gateway connecting Earth and the Blue Temple. Myung shook his head. If Solomon was behind all this, I just need to get rid of him as well. All of Solomon's power was divided up in the first place. From Lemegidon to Elersigo. If he appeared as an enemy, Myung decided to get rid of him as well. With a firm expression, Myung spoke. I will set the species value to 1. The exact number of Elersigo was 32,642. Each one of them a high level of fighting power even among other high ranks. If you released them all at once, a few cities would disappear in an instant. However, what Myung wanted was to instill awareness in humanity and to remain as an absolute enemy. He was going to let them know that the underworld was not a safe place right now. As when they thought that it was safe and stayed dormant, it was really the end for humanity. Go. As an advance team, he prepared 1,000 Elersigo. As he set the species value to humans, they would attack whenever they found a human. Among them, he sent half to the great city. He arranged it so that 300 would go to Malalan and 200 to mid-size cities. Only pure strength will work against Elersigo. If their powers weren't pure, they wouldn't be able to pierce through the Elersigus barrier. If humanity realized this, they would try harder to gain and raise their pure strength instead of other means. And such purity was also deadly to demons. Myung was done conquering the noble castle. As he had gained everything he wanted, there was nothing more to see here. He started to move with the rest of his army, about 40,000 spectres and 30,000 Elersigo. Slowly. However, the intense atmosphere they gave off was completely deadly. The great city was still active. The beginners who entered every month and the established groups. As well as the people in between who harmonized and kept the balance. You're here. I was waiting for you, Fighting King. Follow me. Horan is waiting for you. A bald muscular man. The man called Fighting King entered a glamorous 12-story building. A scent permeated the building. The Fighting King frowned as the scent made him feel like he was going to lose consciousness. Women wearing light clothing tempted the Fighting King with their slender wrists and arms. There was no woman who wasn't beautiful, and they all had their distinct features. It was the best entertainment place where they sold women and their talents. However, as it was strictly regulated, not everyone could enter this place. Unless they were of similar rank to the children of the 9 guilds or the 5 great clans, it was impossible to enter. However, the Fighting King was an exception. As he was one of the top 10 strongest people and was well known, his fame was at another level. It is here. The man who led the Fighting King to the 12th floor made a slightly sad expression. Although he was quite talented, enough to be the guard, he wasn't able to enter this place as he pleased. As he could only enter this place once in a while, his sadness was understandable. However, the fighting king didn't relax his expression at all. Instead, he gave off a deadly aura. Due to this, the man who guided him couldn't help but smile. Ga, Horan, the fighting king has arrived. Please let him come in. Thump. There was no time for the guide to even open the door for him. The fighting king just kicked the door wide open and entered. There, a beautiful woman in her 30s, sitting on the other side wearing a dress with numerous roses, caught his attention. She was Horan, the owner who managed this place. The heroine who had made this place from the ground up by combining Oriental and Western beauty. There wasn't anyone nearby who didn't know about her. Also, her hidden identity was that of the head of the Heavenly Maid clan. Although the clan wasn't part of the 5 great clans, they were still known to have as much power as them. What is the fighting king doing here? You bitch, don't try to play games with me. You should know that I came to find my pupil. I even told you in advance when I would come by. But, what did you say? Why am I here? If you are talking about Sparkle. The fighting king interrupted her. Don't call her that ridiculous nickname. The reason why I entrusted my pupil to the Heavenly Maid clan was so that she could learn your unique delicate movements. I never entrusted her to you so that she could become a courtesan. She is far from learning all our skills. And, it is essential for her to be taught at this place as well. No, she has already learned it all. The fighting king spoke with certainty. Then, the woman, Horan, frowned. It is true that Sparkle's talents are amazing, but, aren't you disregarding us too much? I'm not disregarding you. I am just saying that my pupil's talents have already reached the sky. Horan couldn't speak any further. As what the fighting king had said was true. She was a true talent who was able to absorb their abilities so quickly in just a year. Horan tried her best to hide her talents. As if she didn't, she would have lost her to the other large clans. Either way, I am going to be taking my pupil. Where is she? At this hour, she would be drinking. She wouldn't be pouring drinks to men, correct? The fighting king's gaze was scary. A strong will by him could be felt that, if she was to speak incorrectly, he would destroy the whole place. However, Horan shook her head. And continued to speak. She should be drinking liquor. Inside a storage room filled with liquor, a girl in her teens sat on the floor. The girl spoke as she gulped down all of the liquor in a glass, as well as a few side dishes. Ah, it's delicious. Verb. She was so drunk. Then, she let out a sigh. They say life's bitter like liquor, but this is so sweet. It means that my life isn't that harsh, right? Her tongue was so twisted. There was already several empty liquor bottles rolling next to her. Then she spoke, as she looked at a picture that looked like it was drawn by a child. Dad. Susie knew that her birth father had already crossed the path he couldn't return. Although it was news the fighting king had told her, the feeling that only families could feel made her feel this way as well. After asking around for more and more information, she finally went to the Twilight Village. There, the girl, Susie found the shell with the same shape as her father. They said her father became assimilated by a monster and attacked the village. And that one man had defeated the monster. She believed her father had died then. Susie asked them for his shell in order to bury him. Dad, I'm livin' very well. I want to see Tiwanapa as well, but I don't have the courage. Tiwanapa is doin' so well that I don't want to be a burden to him. Susie's shoulders drooped down. I also wanna see Mr. Myung. But, he also went to the same place as you. I'm doin' well on my own. Screech. Then, a window opened. When Susie turned to see who it was, a familiar bald man was there. It's my teacher. Although I asked them to teach you their skills, it seems like they taught you how to drink. A drink is life's friend. Did I say it wasn't? But, it is still too early for you to drink. As he forcefully took the liquor glass away from her, she made a sad face. I'm all grown up though. I know you spent 2 extra years in the ancient ruins. But, you are still in your teenage years. While she was exploring the ancient ruins, Susie had been confined there once. It was a place where time had stopped. Susie spent 2 years trapped there. After coming out from that place, Susie's attitude towards the Fighting King had changed. She at least treated him like her teacher. Susie stopped being drunk. Her red face instantly turned back to normal. Her twisted tongue also come back to normal. I think my skill is similar to yours already. You are arrogant. You are far from surpassing me. Then, would you like to duel? First, let's thump. At that moment, a huge explosion was heard. A commotion started outside, and the two tried to listen. What is it? What's happening? They say the wall has been destroyed. The wall? Did something invade? I don't know. Some spider-like things. Thud. Crash. The commotion didn't stop. It was certain that there was a huge occurrence. Susie lifted her head. Should we compete with that instead of a duel? The Fighting King nodded his head and left the storage room. Susie followed him after covertly taking one of the bottles. Chapter 206, Truth, or 3. Translation, Nadu. Edit, Sefter. Screech screech. With the sound of metal being scratched, the spiders spewed out their threads. Tseek. Everything touched by the threads was melted, and from the mouth of the spiders, a powerful ray of fire that destroyed everything shot out. Where did such monsters pop up from? Where are the garrisons? Where did they go? The people couldn't help but be confused. Before the invaders arrived at the great city, the garrisons should have stopped them, or notified them of invaders, but there were no signs of either. The spider monsters that suddenly appeared destroyed the walls and climbed up them to attack the people. Their numbers were in the hundreds. There seemed to be about 500 of them. Shit! Run away! There were more than 100,000 people living in the great city. Among them, more than half were able to fight when they were needed. But, their attacks didn't work against the spider monsters. They were helpless. But, within the great city, there were many guilds. In the past, the great city had quickly recovered and strengthened their defense after suffering a lot of damage due to the appearance of the Sky Devil. Soon, many people wearing the identical jackets appeared. Long-range attack team, forward! Forward! The very first to act was the Luminescent Guild. With their blue jackets bearing a symbol of light radiating, they appeared and started to deal with the chaos after quickly analyzing the situation. The long-range attack team of 300 people stood in a horizontal line and prepared to attack. Bahamut! The Luminescent Guild has arrived. Even the rising star, Kim Ti-wan came. The people who weren't able to run away cheered. The Luminescent Guild was one of the guilds who developed rapidly after they were faced with the Sky Devil's trial. The guild master of the Luminescent Guild, Bahamut, shouted as he raised his great sword from his shoulder. Destroy them all, wolves of the Luminescent Guild! 500 guild members who held short-ranged weapons quickly moved. Their teamwork was also good. The melee warriors distracted the spider monsters, while long-ranged attacks bombarded them. It went smoothly, as if they were one body. It looked as natural as breathing. You could tell how hard they had trained from how this scene played out. The last 2 years. After the Sky Devil's trial occurred, the great city was clearly divided between those who progressed, and those who were unable to cope with the changes. And the results of this progress showed. PL, please save me! A woman fell on the ground and screamed out loud. The spider monsters didn't distinguish between men or women. They killed humans as soon as they saw them. A spider that saw the woman on the ground was approaching her. The monster grew more terrifying as she saw it rip humans apart with its 8 legs as if they were toys. As the spider was about to tear the woman into pieces, a man appeared. Thud. The man crashed into the spider with a loud sound. Due to his huge silver shield, the spider was repelled. Are you okay? Thank you. Please get away from this place. Have trust in us wolves. Go. The woman forcefully held her sprained leg and stood up. Then, the blue-coated wolves surrounded her. Captain T1. I think they are using the immune skill. The man called T1 got up with his huge shield and looked at the spiders again. Behind him, 100 members stood in rows. Immune skill. The man, T1, observed the spider's movements. It seemed to absorb other people's attacks and was recovering. Why does only my strength work on them? T1 quickly thought about this. The strength he could control. Eradication. It rejected illegitimate power. Naturally, this power was extremely pure. T1 looked at the battlefield. It wasn't that people's strengths weren't working on them at all. Natural types of skills. Although it wasn't much, they definitely had an effect. Everyone, lose your magic weapons. What do you mean? Get rid of their weapons? The team couldn't help but be confused. The veins on T1's neck bulged. Impure powers don't work against them. T1 quickly discovered the spider's weakness. If one were to count those who worked the hardest over the last 2 years, T1 would definitely be on the list. However, T1 was still unsatisfied. This was because his goal was too great. There was no time to waste if he was to catch up with the man that was still firmly embedded in his mind. The team replaced the weapons that had all sorts of magic. And held just swords, shields, and spears made purely of metal. Skreek. The spider that fell back quickly moved to attack T1. But, it couldn't pierce him. T1 was a rising star who was known as the Shield Guardian. He got the title because even if his opponent's ability surpassed his, if he was holding his shield, nothing could pass through. Thud. In the blink of an eye, the spider was bounced back. Who is it? T1 frowned. 2 people suddenly appeared and started throwing spiders around. They didn't belong to his group of wolves. A woman, and a man with a large build, both wearing masks. They looked like they were enemies of the monster spiders. Like an intense wind, they ripped spiders apart. While doing so, the masked woman looked at T1. As their eyes met, the woman bowed her head down, then stomped on the ground and flew up into the air. Who is she? A master with a mask. The team also didn't seem to know. There was no information about 2 masters wearing masks. T1 thought about the woman's eyes for a moment. Don't doze off. Screech. There were still a lot of spiders. Susie bit her lips. T1 Appa. It was a face she hasn't seen in a while. It seemed like at least 5 or 6 years since they saw each other last. But T1 was the same as she remembered. Besides having slightly more muscles and a hardened expression, it was still the same T1 in her memories. He had settled down and was now leading 100 members. And so, she wore a mask. As she didn't want to be a burden to him. She even forced the Fighting King to wear one as well. The Fighting King had a lot of enemies in the great city. 8. Susie, I think I'll be winning this competition. The Fighting King chuckled as he tore the leg from a spider. Susie took out the bottle of liquor she hid. She smiled as she poured out the liquor from the ceramic bottle. Then, shall I start now? Spat. The air popped. The air near Susie quickly expanded. Then, as Susie stomped her feet on the ground sank down. Thump. It was a skill that utilized the exquisite principle of the 10,000 weight hammer, Manja Onhu. At that moment, Susie disappeared. She reappeared on top of a spider. As she wielded the sword she suddenly took out, the spider's body became like a beehive. And like a canvas, from the holes bloomed cherry blossoms. The swordsmanship of the heavenly maid clan. As the heavenly maid's swordsmanship utilized increased weight and pure energy, the spider monster couldn't withstand her attack. You mixed something weird in there. The fighting king clicked his tongue as he watched her. She showed off her new mystery door technique as she mixed the principle of manja Onhu with the movement. As the movement had a good balance of energy, even the fighting king couldn't keep up with the speed. At least, in terms of speed, she was in the top 10 of humanity. Susie was like a fish in water. She quickly caught up to the game that started at 8:0. I shouldn't be playing around any longer. The fighting king smiled. He now understood how one great pupil was better than 10 average pupils. However, as a teacher, he couldn't lose this game. The fighting king also gave his all. While this was occurring, other guilds started to slowly appear after finishing their preparations. It seemed like the spider monsters were slowly dying off. Screech! Squeak! That is, until more spiders climbed up the walls. How many are there? The wall is collapsing. Ah! When they were almost done clearing 500 spiders, as if that was just the beginning, more spiders climbed up the walls. No, they just destroyed the walls. The people who saw the scene outside the walls couldn't help but be astonished. Giant spider monsters were endlessly heading towards them. Myung admired the scene. He couldn't help but admire them. By what he recalled from 2 years ago, he thought 500 spiders would be enough. However, the resistance of the great city was strong. They quickly learned how to deal with the situation and destroyed the spiders. The great city changed after facing the Sky Devil's trial. This was truly the benefit of a trial. This was the hope humanity had. Not being dormant. Just by this, they had gained much greater strength than they had 2 years ago. They collaborated their strength and, unlike the past, they weren't divided. They knew how to fight together against one common enemy. However, trials needed to be done periodically. For their unity to not die out, they needed a continuous driving force. Why couldn't they do this in the past? The past, before Myung returned. Humanity was weak. One would wonder how it was possible for them to be so weak. It was because of the Forest of Death, as well as the clans and guilds' self-centered interests. However, everything had changed after the Sky Devil's trial. The original selfish bastards mostly died or were in critical condition. Their vacancy was an opportunity for young, idealistic people. They became hope for the weak. This was why the present was different from the past. Now it is possible, they can change. Myung didn't expect this. He never expected them to change so much in 2 years. Myung was slightly thrilled. It had changed. It wasn't just a possibility. It was a result. I'll become an enemy to all. As he confirmed the result, Myung took the role of villain without hesitation. At Myung's gesture, additional Elursigo started to move. Let's fight. As fighting endlessly was the only way live. Someone is quickly approaching. We will get rid of him. Then, the 5 nine-tailed foxes who were assisting Myung started to move. Myung also noticed the presence of something approaching him. At least in terms of quick movement technique, he was excellent. Someone was breaking past all the monsters and quickly heading towards where Myung was at. Perhaps, they had realized someone was controlling the Elursigo. The 9-tailed foxes swished their tails before vanishing. Their method of shortening distances was shikuki. Myung ignored them all. Right now, he wanted to give the great city his full attention. There was a reason why he stopped so near to the great city. By using a bead one of the 9-tailed foxes had left behind, Myung could watch the situation in the great city in real time. The past has changed. We have changed. Just like how Myung had moved on from his past. Although they hadn't experienced it yet, they would definitely become different people from the past. Growling. Then, 2 Chunglangs bared their teeth. It seemed like the nine-tailed foxes were unable to stop the person. An unknown presence was felt from nearby. As he turned his head, a woman wearing a mask slowly approached him. Kill! Grrrrrrr. As soon as Muiyong gave out the order, the two Chunglangs immediately ran towards the woman. The masked woman was already covered with wounds. There was no way she'd be fine after going through all the monsters and the nine-tailed foxes. However, the woman in the mask even passed through the attacks of the Chunglangs. Amazing! Muiyong made a small remark as he faced the woman who was approaching him. The woman, holding a sword, leapt forward to pierce the sword toward Muiyong's front. However, the sword never reached Muiyong. This was because, as soon as the woman saw Muiyong's face, she suddenly stopped. Me, stir. Thud. After saying this word, the woman fell on the ground. Blood gushed out from all the wounds on her body. Kaiak. An enraged Chunglang then chomped down on her. With its teeth pierced into her body, it wanted to eat her. Seeing this, Muiyong raised one hand. Chapter 207, Truth, or, 4. Translation, Nadu. Edit, Sefter. King. Kin. Muiyong noticed the presence of a small animal within the woman. It was a mouse the size of 2 fists. It wasn't just the emperor of the shrew mice. The Chunglang tried to show its teeth but it couldn't. Stop! Muiyong spoke quietly. Grrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr nine-tailed foxes had also transformed. This meant that the woman in front of him had that much skill. However, the Chung Lang didn't stop. Spat! Muyong grabbed one of Chung Lang's tooth and crushed it. HRRRRMM. I said stop. The Chung Lang was completely surprised as it quickly backed off. Then, as the Chung Lang's eyes met Muyong's, it quickly lowered its tail. Muyong slowly came to a realization. Killing isn't the only way. He had immersed himself in his role as humanity's enemy too deeply. This meant that he was still doing things the wrong way. He had found himself, but Muyong was still developing both internally and externally. What was certain, was the fact that Muyong couldn't defeat all the demon gods alone. You couldn't kill all the demon gods just because you were strong. Certain conditions were needed. For example, in the case of Dandelion, you needed to see past the lie and find the truth, and with the famous demon god Amun, you could only face him with pure magic. There were several demon gods with these kinds of special conditions. And it was impossible for Muyong alone to satisfy these conditions. So, Muyong united humanity and tried to cultivate their powers to fight against them. So they wouldn't forget their fundamental reason for fighting. All Muyong needed to do was make them gather and stimulate them appropriately. But that didn't mean his role was to just show up and kill them all. Be Susie. Her half-ripped mask exposed her face. Was she now in her teens? The girl's face was laid bare. Although her appearance had changed quite a lot, she still looked very familiar to Muyong. Be Susie. The child he saw last at the Sky Library. The girl who collapsed was really Susie. He had never expected her to grow so much that she could pass by even the Chung Langs and nine-tailed foxes, but Muyong remembered what Susie had. The lineage of light had laid its foundation. The power that was closest to the source. Although it grew slowly at first, it was a power that developed uncontrollably once it bloomed. Her power, that seemed to be condensed into a core, emanated outwards. It felt like the sun rather than holy. Additionally, it seemed like she had received another fortune as well. That would explain why she had developed so quickly. Divine blessing. From Muyong's hands, intense light spilled out. The divine blessing was an absolute healing skill that could revive a person who hadn't died. As it was a healing authority bestowed by Gabriel, a few parts that had been bitten off were completely healed. Then Muyong, who rose from his seat, spoke towards the nine-tailed foxes. Destroy this place. Get rid of their walls, and let them know that no place is safe. Yes. The 9-tailed foxes, who transformed back into their human forms, kneeled as one. Muyong turned around. And once again he thought about his role. Muyong didn't want humanity to go extinct. To destroy the demon gods, humans were indispensable. Although he knew the conditions to destroy a few demon gods, he still had no idea about one in particular. Baal. The demon god in the first seat. However, he kept guessing that the way to defeat Baal was for humanity to unite after destroying the rest of the demon gods. Let's go. Muyong turned around. To do this, Muyong would destroy their walls. As even though the walls provided them with safety, it also made them become passive and divided. Everyone stopped. Even the spiders stopped what they were doing. Instead, they turned around to see the outside of their city. A sun. A sun was being created. To be exact, it was a sun created by a huge ball of flame. What is that? What in the hell is going on? The people panicked. A strong power that could be felt through their skin. It drew the holy flame to its peak. Rumble. Ruumble, black lightning struck as well. The power of black lightning within anguish was awakened. The power of black lightning was added to the holy flame. The flames looked like they were about to burst with the fury of a nuclear explosion. Then, the huge ball of flame started to head towards their walls. We need to neutralize it. Use all your long-range attack skills. Stop it. A few hundred types of attack skills poured towards the ball of flame. However, there were only a few people who could be truly called magicians in the great city. An archmage was one who realized the essence of magic through Amon's trials. If the Tower of Wisdom he had created was here, the story may have been different, but unfortunately, it was on the other side of the great city. Grrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr all of the walls were disintegrated. The flame only destroyed the walls. Beyond the devastated walls, everyone could see a man with 6 wings. However, for some reason, he seemed familiar. A few people couldn't help but find it odd. That person is... How? Those who knew Muyong from 2 years ago, when the Sky Devil's trial occurred, murmured as if they couldn't believe what they were seeing. They never expected Muyong would be the one who had sent spiders to destroy their walls. With a serious expression, Muyong spoke. The war has already begun. You are given 5 years. Prepare to fight for the survival of humanity. If you continue to cower behind these walls, you will perish. From the beginning, this was his goal. To convey these words, and to instill vigilance in them. Would it be enough to just tell them? Muyong shook his head. If words worked on idle humanity, they wouldn't have been driven to extinction in the past. They needed a certain amount of stimulation, as well as a sense of crisis. A cause to awaken them. Of course, the great city was in a better state than other places. However, if people believed they were safe, they would usually choose to live in peace. The only reason the demon gods and the demon kings weren't attacking humanity was their internal conflicts. Once their infighting was resolved, they would quickly act towards the extinction of all other species. Muyong was planning to stop the great calamity. However, to do this, he needed to wait for the demon gods to assault the underworld. I'll buy you time. 5 years. He thought that was the amount of time he could buy them after the demon gods ceased their petty squabbling. Diablo's appearance became a variable. Originally, it was normal for them to have more time. However, with Diablo's appearance, the internal conflict seemed like it would quickly resolve. As an external enemy tends to force warring parties to unite. More than anything else, by giving them the deadline of 5 years, he had basically created a drive for them to act for at least 5 years. Once a goal and purpose were clear, idleness would dissipate to some extent. You bastard! What did you do with my pupil? A masked man with a large build jumped up. After gathering a huge amount of energy, he stretched out his fist. Although he was wearing a mask, there was only one person who could produce that much energy with his bare hands. The Fighting King. There was no one else. Muyong stretched his hand out. Thud. Kuig. The air exploded. However, it was the Fighting King who bounced out. Muyong countered the Fighting King's power, so that he would be attacked by his own strength. As Muyong had already surpassed a total level of 600 and was almost at 700, he had already surpassed the current limits of humanity. There are no safe zones in the underworld. Bang! Muyong spread his wings completely open. Then, a huge tower fell in the middle of the great city. Thud! It was one of the towers from the noble castle. Muyong had summoned one of the 45 towers to the great city, as a symbol of sorts. Everyone looked at the ominous black tower. By the time they turned back, Muyong had disappeared. It wasn't just the great city. All cities and villages above a certain size had a black tower dropped from above. The towers were deeply rooted, and became huge symbols. It was also the same for the holy city of Malalan. Following the attacks of the spiders, a black tower, what is truly happening? A cardinal inside the basilica let out a sigh. In this place, all the cult judges, cardinals, and high-ranking officials were gathered. A beautiful woman sat right beside the Pope. Hyacinth. A girl, who had suddenly appeared one day and became the saintess of flower, was now a woman. With the highest strength and authority, she had even gained power equal to the Pope. Due to this, Malalan was experiencing extreme internal confusion. Normally, two kings couldn't effectively rule over one country. This was the same for any group. There was no reason why Malalan would be different. However, in the high-ranking officials' eyes, the power had already passed over to Hyacinth. As even the Pope was captivated by the flower's charms. Then, the Pope spoke. It seems like it is a similar tower to the ones that appeared at the noble castle. Did the devotee we sent not return yet? Unfortunately, we lost contact with the noble castle. But as he said there was nothing inside the tower, it is truly an unknown cause. What shall we do? It was an incident that was troublesome to the Pope. When they were able to finally stop the spider's attack, a tower was placed in the middle of Malalan. But, there was nothing inside the tower. There was only a strange feeling of ghastliness. No one could do anything. From the beginning, they didn't have the authority. They gathered at this place to ask the Pope for his opinion. But, the Pope was unable to make a decision. Normally, he wasn't so indecisive. Serafina slightly raised her head and looked at Hyacinth. It is clearly her that disturbs the Pope's mind. And it was Serafina who brought Hyacinth to Malalan. Not killing her when she first discovered her, and sending her to the Pope, was the source of this trouble. Clunk! Suddenly, the door opened, and a priest entered. Priest Alan. Did you just return? The cardinal who dispatched the priest yelled as if he was happy to see him. But, Alan's condition was critical. His clothes were ripped, and bones were visible. He squeezed all his strength in order to speak. He is coming. He is coming. He? Who is he? Muyong. The man with 6 wings. He is the Hell King. He is the Hell King who rules over Hell. He is coming. Thump. Having left words that people couldn't comprehend, he fainted. But, another source of information quickly arrived. They say a man called Muyong appeared at the great city. It seems like he is the culprit behind the attack of the spiders. After hearing this, everyone just blinked their eyes. Muyong? It was a name they thought they heard from somewhere before. However, aside from 2 people, no one was sure. The tips of Hyacinth's mouth went up. She let out a moan filled with an odd delight. It was a smile she never showed anyone in Malalan. Everyone was lost in admiration of her appearance and her sound of joy. But Serafina, one of the cult judges, wasn't lost. Myung. She knew Myung well. She had searched for him for 2 years without success, so why did he appear at the great city? Chapter 208, Truth, or End. Translation, Nadu. Edit, Sefter. Sponsored, MH, and Anonymous. Serafina was in a hurry. She wanted to go and confirm it herself. If he really was Myung, why was he doing this? This was because, to Serafina, Myung was the only angel in the underworld. There are no angels in the underworld. Perhaps, just like everyone said, Myung wasn't an angel? I need faith. The faith to find the real truth. Serafina closed her eyes. She shouldn't jump to conclusions. She needed to find the truth that was hidden within. The truth, or if it was a lie, she needed to confirm it with her own 2 eyes. As there were many times when God's will was hard to interpret for humans. Apart from her, one more person reacted. The woman who reacted strongly to the name Myung, Hyacinth, was thrilled. He came. Finally, he came to me. Hyacinth had no memories of the past. She just felt like she needed to wait. When she heard the name Myung, her world changed. A savior in the dark. The object of her fear, and the person who owned her affection. She was certain that the person who she longed for and waited for was Myung. She thought that Myung would take her with him once he appeared. She felt like she could finally leave this boring place and find her true self. That was what she thought. Although it wouldn't take long to realize that this was not true. Hyacinth didn't care what Myung did. To her, the fact that he appeared was most important. Hyacinth. Everyone looked at Hyacinth as if they found her behavior strange. Hyacinth rose from her seat and suddenly started to head out. While barefoot. I need to quickly make myself more beautiful. So that when he comes, he will see my most beautiful appearance. Hyacinth was also in a hurry. King! King! King cried. Even though it was the emperor of the shrew mice, he cried with his small body that was only the size of 2 fists. It was doing its best for its fallen master. Beside it, even the fighting king was there. The injuries were all healed, so what is the problem? Later in the evening, Suzy was groaning under the bonfire. However, she was still unconscious. Although her energy levels were higher than before and she had no wounds, she was still unable to wake up. Is there a psychological issue? He couldn't feel any presence of a curse either. Then, the only possibility seemed to be related to the mind, but there were so many things that could be the cause. However, Suzy was a child with a strong mentality. If this wasn't the case, her mentality would have crashed much earlier. When she found out her father had died, or even before then, there were many events that could have influenced her. Suzy overcame all of it. Even the fighting king even admired her. No, no. As if she was dreaming, she murmured. What are you saying no about? Speak, speak. The fighting king was very frustrated. It had already been 2 days since she started to sleep as if she dead. Because of this, they were unable to get far away from this place. Suzy suddenly disappeared while hunting the spiders after saying how she found the host of the spiders. Then, the man called Myung appeared and attacked the great city. The fighting king thought Suzy had died. So, that was why he moved to kill Myung. Of course, he couldn't kill him. To do so, there was too great of a difference in their level. It was a feeling the fighting king couldn't even feel from most ancient dragons. Then, he pulled himself together and searched for Suzy. Although it was a huge relief when he found out that she was alive, but with her condition like this. Please don't go. Dad, mister. Don't go. Tisk. He clicked his tongue. And dropped his head. The truth that the fighting king kidnapped her didn't change. At the time, he was so crazy for vengeance that he did so, but now, he felt like he needed to atone for what he did. As she couldn't even confirm her father's death and could only touch his dead body, it would have traumatized her. I'm sorry. After growing old and accepting a pupil, his urge for revenge has become small. Suzy had basically changed the Fighting King. That might have been why he gave everything he could to her. Everything about Mystery Door. He was teaching her all of what he had learned and realized. He thought this was the only way he could atone for what he did. By giving her the strength to live in the underworld. But, he probably wouldn't be able to cancel this debt for a lifetime. The Mr. she is calling out is probably the man she talked about. Whenever she had a chance, Suzy talked about Mr. How he was an amazing person. That he was incomparable to the Fighting King. Where would such a person exist in this world? Even when he thought about all of humanity, there wasn't anyone who could say such a thing to the Dragon Lord Hansung, or the Fighting King. So, he laughed. Whenever he did, she always said you will regret it later. Even now, he couldn't believe it. He thought there could be no human who could greatly surpass him. That was what the Fighting King always thought. Of course, he understood that this Mr. played a big role in Suzy. No. Plud. Suddenly, Suzy raised her upper body. As if she'd had a nightmare, her body was covered with a cold sweat. Instantly after she got up, she looked around. After finding the Fighting King, she quickly asked. Where is Mr.? What are you saying after sleeping for 2 days? Suzy made a serious expression. 2 days, has passed. Yes, exactly 2.5 days have passed. What in the world happened to you? Suzy grabbed her forehead. And she spoke after breathing deeply. I met Mr. The Mr. you always talk about. Yes, I'm certain. Even if his appearance has changed quite a lot, I can tell. Where is this Mr. you are talking about? I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Why he was controlling the monsters from behind. The Fighting King knitted his brows. Are you saying that he is the main culprit behind this? Suzy nodded her head. The main culprit? Yes, you could say he was the main culprit. But, she still couldn't believe it. Although the Myung she knew was cold and quiet, he was someone who always tried to find the best way. She thought there was definitely a small amount of warmth within him, and that he wouldn't do something without gaining something from it. There must be a reason. A reason why he needed to attack the great city. Suzy tried her best to find the reason. Currently, she was overwhelmed just from the fact that Myung was alive. He wasn't dead. She thought he died inside the Sky Library. She thought she wouldn't be able to see him again. Didn't she escape alone and cry for a few days and nights? But, he was alive. Even if his appearance had changed, he was definitely Myung. I need to look into it. Do you? Where did he go? He is dangerous. He is more dangerous than anyone I have ever met. The Fighting King was already sick and tired of him. The man who deflected his full power attack as if it was a joke. In front of the overwhelming difference in their level, the Fighting King felt a wall. A wall that couldn't be climbed over. He believed Myung had reached a level that no human had ever reached. Perhaps the Fighting King felt this way because he felt like he had reached his limits. However, what the Fighting King said was true. Although he had seen numerous monsters and demon kings, he had never felt such danger before. They shouldn't interfere with him. Especially Suzy. She would be swallowed up by his darkness. Then, I'll go alone. Please don't stop me. Suzy was firm with her decision. She wanted to find out the truth. Myung was very pragmatic. He would not have attacked the great city without a reason. She wished to find out the truth. The Fighting King no longer had any reason to stop her. As she had basically caught up to his level, he would need to fight to the death with her if he wanted to stop her. Must you really do so? The Fighting King's gaze changed. Still, he needed to stop her. The man called Myung was far too dangerous a person. Are you going to stop me? I would like to stop you. Then, stop me. Suzy got up from her seat. Suzy's gaze was very aggressive. She pulled out her sword and got into position. Try to stop me if you can. She looked like she would definitely go, even if her life was at risk. There was no way the fighting king couldn't read her expression. You won't be able to handle it. Who are you to decide my limits? The fighting king stopped talking. It was true. There were no limits with Suzy. That was something even the fighting king knew. She possessed a more amazing ability every time he saw her. However, he couldn't help but feel as if he was leading a child set out on the river alone. I'll go with you. The fighting king spoke after dropping his shoulders. No teacher could deny their student. This saying was correct. Suzy looked at him as if this was unexpected, and put away her sword. Growl. At that moment, a stomach growled. It was heard from Suzy's location. Suzy shrugged her shoulders. Then, let's eat first. King, you're also hungry, right? King. King got excited and spun around on top of Suzy's shoulder. Haha. The fighting king shook his head. She was an amazing child in many ways. Myung moved back. All of the city walls were destroyed. There was nothing holding them back now. The walls symbolized many things, and as it was destroyed, the people realized that it wouldn't be enough to help them, and would search for other means to try to protect themselves. In addition, the tower was a symbol for them to not forget him. For 5 years, the tower would be regarded as an omen. Myung would truly become the incarnation of an omen. I don't care. Myung walked. And behind him, numerous monsters followed. Among them, there was also Taken. What are you going to do now? Are you going to meet the other undead? I'm going to return to the demon god's territory. This was enough. Myung had provided guidance. It wasn't his concern if they follow it or not. He warned humanity and instilled awareness. Although he wasn't certain if that would be enough, if he went any further, it would be like upending an anthill. Myung didn't really know what was good enough. To do that, we need to hunt the Sky Lord. They say the demon gods placed him in the border of the demon god's territory to stop Diablo's army from entering. Sky Lord. He had heard the rumor that an incredibly enormous monster was at the border of the demon god's territory. But, Myung didn't care. No matter what it was just a monster. He didn't plan on struggling against a monster that wasn't even a demon god. However, Myung couldn't relax. Since a while ago, he'd felt an unknown presence. Someone is following me. Myung's senses couldn't be deceived. They were able to hide without Taken noticing. It seemed like no one else felt its presence. Myung spread his wings. He flew up into the sky, and sliced a cloud. Swoosh! With a small sound, the cloud was split in half. Myung was able to discover an assassin hiding inside it. Ataraxia. Ataraxia. He was an assassin Myung gained in the past. He was able to control snakes, and was a master in killing off his presence. Myung never expected him to hide inside a cloud. Ataraxia's shoulder had a long cut through it. However, as if he couldn't feel any pain, Ataraxia landed on the ground and kneeled right away. But, it wasn't an indication of obedience. There was no feeling that he was bound to Myung. Rather, it seemed like he was bound to another person. Myung frowned. What are you? As Myung asked, Ataraxia replied. Master B. Seungmin wishes to see you. B. Seungmin. Myung remembered. There was no way he couldn't. He was Suzy's father, and at the same time, a lich who assisted him closely. He was an indispensable loyal servant, like Taken. Chapter 209, Sky Lord, 1. Translation, Nadu. Edit, Sefter. However, Muyong frowned. What Ataraxia said meant that he wanted Muyong to go see Sungmin. But, that couldn't be possible. While Muyong was away, it was good that Sungmin kept a connection with Ataraxia, but in this situation, Sungmin should have been the one to come see him, not Ataraxia. Where is Sungmin? My master is at a very deep place. Please forgive him for not being here, due to unforeseen circumstances. Due to unforeseen circumstances, you say. However, Muyong couldn't feel any sincerity. Plus, Ataraxia didn't even tell him Sungmin's exact location. As if he was being tested. That was right, Ataraxia made Muyong feel like he was being tested. How dare he? Muyong spread his wings. And shot thousands of feathers towards Ataraxia. Swoosh! Ataraxia avoided his attack. Normally, these was something that could not happen since Muyong created him and controlled him. His undead usually accepted whatever Muyong did to them. But, right now, he avoided Muyong's attack. This also showed Sungmin's intentions. What a foolish thing to do. Sungmin. He knew Muyong's personality. For him to still conduct this sort of gamble meant he had now totally left Muyong for one reason or another. If he had left him, Muyong couldn't let Sungmin live. Sungmin knew too much about Muyong to let him live. Really, the one who knew Muyong the best in this world was Sungmin. At that moment, Ataraxia's body became faint. He was cutting through space to move to another area. He was trying to run away. But, Muyong wasn't the type to just let him go. Swaak! Muyong took out anguish and wielded it. Then, the space Ataraxia opened up was sliced. Muyong's sword was a swordsmanship that could attack anything. Therefore, you could say teleportation-type mobile skills wouldn't work in front of Muyong. Ataraxia's body became vivid again. Crash! Muyong kicked Ataraxia's body with his foot. As Ataraxia's body was shoved to the ground, Muyong once again raised his wings to shoot out numerous feathers at his body, binding him. After making him unable to move, Muyong stretched out his hand. The soul on top of Ataraxia's head was still intact. In this condition, if he was to use soul exploitation, Muyong would be able to fully absorb Ataraxia's soul. This would be enough to send a warning to Sungmin. I'm sorry. You are really Muyong. As Muyong was about to exploit Ataraxia's soul, another voice emerged from Ataraxia's mouth. It was Sungmin's voice. A voice that sounded glad and awkward. Muyong confirmed that Ataraxia and Sungmin's souls were in sync. Are you testing me? I needed to confirm if you were truly Muyong. As you had disappeared for the last 2 years. I had to also consider that you could be controlled by Lucifer. Muyong crossed his arms. It didn't seem like he was lying. Well, Muyong did have a lot of problems internally. Although he had spent 2 years inside Diablo's flames, if he wasn't careful he could have lost himself within it. If that did happen, his body would have been given to Lucifer, or became another being. It wouldn't be strange for only his body to be his, and the rest be something else. To that extent, the last 2 years had been very dangerous for Muyong. Sungmin also knew about this a little. As Lucifer was inside Muyong's body, and as Sungmin knew that Muyong was very unstable, he had to be cautious. I'm not corrupted. Although there had been a possibility, this was not currently the case. Now, Muyong would not be shaken. He spoke as if he was making a pledge. Please wait a moment. I will open the gate. Ah, could you remove your feathers? Muyong nodded and removed the feathers that restrained Ataraxia's body. The feathers emitted light and disappeared, as if they had disintegrated. Then, Ataraxia got up and retrieved a small bottle. When he opened the bottle and scattered the liquid in the form of a circle on the floor, the circle became black, and became a channel connecting to another space. Ataraxia looked at Muyong once more. Swoosh! Sungmin appeared through the channel. His appearance had slightly changed. He wore a black cloak, and held a staff made out of dragon bones. All of his flesh had been stripped, and only his bones were left. However, the bones had become thicker and were black. Black bones. But it wasn't due to an evil sort of energy dyeing them with darkness. They had become black by absorbed all light and energy. He was unable to feel any signs of magic from Sungmin. Like Myung, he was absorbing everything within him. Amazing! Myung admired purely. Sungmin had raised his level on his own. It was embarrassing to compare him with 2 years ago. Myung had felt something like this before in the past. The Lich King. In the past, the Lich that was called the Lich King gave him a similar feeling. They say I'm an elder Lich. As I completed my work, my appearance has changed. Sungmin's appearance, that Myung hadn't seen for a while, was truly extraordinary. Of course, from the beginning, he was far from being a normal Lich, but for him to be an elder Lich, wasn't it the final form of a Lich? Well, this was probably the reason why he could control Ataraxia's soul as he wished. I have a lot of questions as well. And I would like to show you something. Sungmin looked behind Myung. An endless number of specters and Elersigo. In front of them, it seemed like Sungmin was slightly overwhelmed. If you go through here, there is a village I created. Please come in. Sungmin went back into the channel with confidence. Myung pondered for a moment before he spoke to the specters. Wait here. Please let us follow you. The 5 nine-tailed foxes requested. It seemed like they still felt that Sungmin, who had suddenly appeared, wasn't trustworthy. Myung nodded after thinking about it for a bit. The Chunglangs and Songsongis should be enough to control the group. Let's go. Takan was already standing beside him. It seemed like he was also curious about Sungmin, and glad to be reunited with him. After watching Takan for a short while, he walked into the circle. Although Myung didn't expect much from what Sungmin called a village, what he saw after passing through the circle was amazing. A few hundreds of houses were spread out in the middle of a mountain range. And the people gathered here seemed familiar for some reason. They had a murderous look in their eyes. There were even some whose flesh sagged like a corpse's. However, they were still very familiar to him. They are. Myung couldn't finish his sentence. He couldn't help it. How could he forget them? As if Sungmin knew what Myung was feeling, he commented. It wasn't easy to find them. They were so spread out. I was only able to find their locations by secretly gathering information from Malalan City and the Great City. The assassins of the Forest of Death, you found them? Yes. How did you know? Myung had never spoken about them to him. Although he did react more regarding them, it would be hard to make the connection just from that. Sungmin spoke as he walked into the village. Your soul and mine were connected. Especially, for me, it was stronger. Even now, doesn't it connect from time to time? Thanks to this, although very rarely, I was able to see a few things that were engraved into your soul. I'm sorry. This is the first time I'm hearing of this. He had never heard of something like this. Sungmin bowed his head and spoke. I also thought it was just something like a dream. Like a dream, I would forget it. But, as time passed, I realized that I wasn't the person concerned. Sungmin's memories weren't exact. There were a lot of blank areas. Even enough for him to forget about Suzy. But now, he seemed to be stable in many ways. Should I have not done this? No. You did well. Myung spoke sincerely. After killing Wang Chunglin, Myung had entered Diablo's trial right away. Normally, he would have found all the locations of the Forest of Death and liberated the people. But, because he was trapped inside, he wasn't able to do so. Sungmin had done it for him. How could he not be happy? Then, Sungmin spoke with a concerned tone. Although I have found them, they were already having a lot of problems. As I'd expect. Especially in terms of brainwashing, there wasn't much I could do. I'm able to keep their minds stable by integrating with their soul, but if Chunglin's brainwashing was rooted deep within them, there was nothing Muiyang could do as well. If he were to forcefully remove it, they could lose their self entirely. They could even become brain dead. How is the village maintaining itself? Unlike specters and Elersigo, humans were creatures who consumed. To maintain a village on such a scale for a long period, it would be hard without a tremendous amount of resources. I'm acting as an information trader. Sometimes, there are people who become free from brainwashing and choose to become my underlings. I'm using them as my informers. Muiyang nodded his head. Even though it was very unlikely, if they became free from brainwashing, the after effects would definitely be there. If they didn't serve someone, or weren't given orders, they would become anxious and commit suicide. Either way, Muiyang couldn't take his eyes off of them. There were also faces he had missed. Although they didn't remember Muiyang, he remembered them. Afterwards, Muiyang looked at Sungmin, who was walking in front of him. As for Sungmin, it was a situation where still he needed to be doubtful of him. If he had shown this village to Lucy Fair, he would have killed them all. Thank you. Sungmin couldn't reply right away. It was the first time he had heard Muiyang thank him. And Sungmin answered a bit late. It was something obvious that I needed to do. You don't need to thank me. Muiyang had a long talk with Sungmin. Although it was mostly Muiyang listening to him, what Sungmin had accomplished in the last 2 years was quite interesting. I have been following Diablo's footsteps. And, I have confirmed that like the other demon gods, he has been collecting the Fissure Stones. Is there a reason why Diablo is collecting the Fissure Stones? Diablo has summoned numerous armies, and they were all called by using the Fissure Stones. Diablo was collecting Fissure Stones? A Fissure Stone was a stone that opened and closed fissures. Muiyang had been asked to collect 3 Fissure Stones by Gremory. To stop his army, the demon gods have placed a strong evil spirit on the border of the demon gods' territory. Sky Lord. Yes, it is an artificial evil spirit that was created solely to fight against Diablo. Thanks to this, they say Diablo is unable to enter the demon gods' territory. Artificial evil spirit? You mean someone created it? I'm not sure who created it. But, it is clear that it's a strong evil creature, strong beyond comprehension. I also need to enter the demon gods' territory. Muiyang needed to go to the demon god's territory to advance to the next step in his quest. However, if the Sky Lord was blocking the path, it would be problematic. Sungmin pondered for a moment before he spoke again. Devils are able to cross freely. I know a devil. If it is him, he would be able to help us cross. He knew a devil? And a devil was going to help them? It was something he had never thought of before. Sungmin continued to talk. He is a devil who is obsessed with trades. If we give him something that he wants, he will surely guide us past the Sky Lord. 1 Fissure Stone. I think it is just another name for the fragments of the fissure. Chapter 210, Sky Lord, 2. Translation, Nadu. Edit, Sefter. Muiyang was lost in his thoughts for a moment. Even though he was trying to join hands with Gremory, it wasn't a problem for him to join hands with a devil to fulfill his needs. To reach his goals, Muiyang was prepared to do whatever it took. Enduring, persevering, and being patient weren't the only ways. I must meet this devil. It will take about 7 days to contact him. What do you think about resting in the village in the meantime? I can't say it will be comfortable, but... Sungmin looked anxious. As it was a place he created and developed on his own, he was slightly hesitant even though he was an elder lich. I will do so. Rather than look around the village, he wanted to check out the assassins who were living here again. He had never expected Sungmin to find each and every one of them, and gather them to this place. Slowly. Little by little. He wanted to move forward even if it was only by a little. Wouldn't it be good to do things himself? Although they might not make a big difference individually, these little things would all add up to change the world. Myung didn't know about a lot of things, but he knew about the truth. Swoosh! Shadows gathered on top of branches. Men wearing masks. Myung was leading them from the very front. Nod. After looking into each other's eyes, they nodded. The sign for starting the mission. The target was the man called the Lion King. He was called the Lion King because he had a brown beard like a mane. He held a huge great sword that had a symbol of a lion and made his enemies fall like leaves of a tree. Why must they kill him? There was no reason. They just followed orders to kill. It was the same for all the assassins who were gathered here at this place. Just pups are gathered here. On a narrow hill, the attack began. Numerous assassination techniques, and traps they had placed beforehand. They attacked his weaknesses. However, the Lion King didn't die. Although he did receive a huge wound, he grew much stronger, like the sun shining brighter before it sets. The assassins felt the unexpected change. They tried to withdraw before attacking once more, but his reinforcements were approaching. Then, the assassins decided on who they should sacrifice. Starting from the weakest one, they threw themselves into the Lion King's grasp. Without hesitation. While the Lion King sliced up the body, another assassin attacked the Lion King from his back. That was how the assassins died, with the weakest one first. They left the stronger assassins alive, those who had a higher chance to kill the Lion King. Then, only Myung was left. Just cause a bunch of pups come after me, do you think you could kill a lion? Stab! Myung pierced a dagger into the middle of the Lion King's forehead. And without regrets, he turned back. Even when Myung was the only one alive after completing the mission, Myung didn't feel any emotions. It was a world where the weak died and the strong lived. Just that. As he opened his eyes, he saw the ceiling. Sungmin's village. Myung shook his head. The dream had felt so real, that he wondered if he was dreaming when he woke up. However, soon Myung remembered how he was invited to Sungmin's village and was staying here. He felt like he slept well for the first time in a long time. He felt like he had laid in bed for a few days. This place felt right to him. Myung got up and headed out after making the basic preparations. A lot of people, who were assassins in the past, lived here. He. However, they looked miserable as they leaned against their house or rolled on the ground laughing. They were still unable to free themselves from Wang Chenglin's brainwashing, and were suffering. Among them, there were assassins whom Myung saw in his dream. Myung looked at them subtly. Camaraderie. There was nothing of sort. They helped Myung because they wanted to increase the chance of completing the mission. But, what was this strange feeling? Of course, he must not help them. Chenglin's brainwashing was something that shouldn't be meddled with. If someone couldn't overcome it on their own, a powerful reaction would occur. Myung, my master is calling you. A man with a mask appeared in front of him. The man was also an assassin. However, he was able to be overcome some degree of the brainwashing, and was acting as an informant. He said a visitor has arrived. Myung nodded his head. It had only been 5 days since he entered the village. It was a bit faster than he had expected, but he needed to see the devil if he had arrived. As it could be a devil he was familiar with. A devil with black hair and black skin was drinking tea. Myung knew the moment he saw him. No, from the moment he woke up, he knew that a quite strong devil who had the powers of darkness had entered the village. The devil turned his head and looked at Myung. Then, the devil's eyes became large. Was it because he could read the darkness that could be felt from Myung? Who are you? I have not seen a demon king like you, but... He said Myung was a demon king. He wasn't wrong. However, he was curious. Why do you think I'm a demon king? Because I'm a demon king. Isn't it natural for demon kings to recognize another? Muyong raised the tip of one of his eyebrows. One demon god had a few dozen to a few hundred demon kings, therefore, there was no way for Muyong to know them all. Well, someone like you would only be here for a trade, right? It doesn't matter whose vassal you are or whose vassal I am. Isn't that right? The demon king spoke first in order to check whether he would make a trade or not. He didn't seem like a normal devil. If he was really a demon king, he didn't seem to be ordinary. He needed to check because, to a demon king, a demon god was an absolute being. For the demon god he serves, he needed to do whatever was ordered. It doesn't matter. Muyong agreed. It was rather welcome if he acted this way. So, Muyong sat opposite from him. Soon, Sungmin made another cup of tea and approached. Muyong, this is a tea I cultivated. Sungmin carefully placed his cup in front of Muyong, and when the man saw this, he made a remark. It's surprising. Someone who an elder lich follows. An elder lich. Someone who could be dared called the Lich King. Of course, an elder lich had a territory of its own. It was normal for them to rule as kings, and not to be under anyone. In fact, elder liches were the ones who threatened the demon kings by gathering liches and other undead. That should be the case, but for an elder lich to be following someone, it was very strange. For the sake of convenience, we call him Azul and this person is my master, Muyong. What a strange name. The man, Azul, spoke. Sungmin didn't seem to know his full name. It didn't matter. If his credentials were true. Then, let's start the trade. You want to pass by the Sky Lord? Yes, that is true. How many in number? Muyong spoke without any delays. A bit more than 60,000. It was too much to make them all into talismans and carry them. As Muyong replied, Azul rubbed his chin. An army of 60,000, it isn't that difficult to do, depending on the trade. What do you want as a trade? What I want is something strange. I collect things that can't be easily seen, gained, or touched. In a word, what he was asking Muyong to give, was a mystery. Mystery. A mystery, he said. Muyong himself could be called a mystery, but it was impractical to give himself to Azul. Then, did he want one of the items Muyong had? This should be enough. Muyong took out the Greaves of Destruction. It was an item that could summon Baron. Anyone would widen their eyes and want it. As Muyong was wearing King Slayer's equipment, he no longer needed it. But, Azul didn't seem happy to receive Greaves of Destruction. 20,000. For this equipment, I can move 20,000. Not the other 40,000. You are greedy. What do you think the Sky Lord is? The Sky Lord is a creature that could even consume a godly creature. It is obvious to ask for a bigger price to safely pass such a creature. A creature that kept Diablo in check. Muyong also knew that he needed to prepare for a huge loss to get past him. But, Muyong couldn't give him the equipment he wore. Instead, how about this? It is an item called a small chaos. Sungmin passed him a marble. Azul nodded after he looked at it. It is an item that awakened you into an elder lich. Although there isn't much content, it is very attractive. Azul put the marble aside. Then, he spoke. All right, I will move your army of 60,000 past the Sky Lord. In 3 days, come to the dark blue mountain. Swoosh! Azul rose from his seat. As he had gotten everything he wanted here, he left without any regret. A demon king who doesn't truly show himself. Also, for him to be a demon king who had no subordinates following him, it was a rare sight to see. Muyong drank all of his tea and got up from his seat. If it was the dark blue mountain, it was difficult to fully prepare even if he started right away. The way to dark blue mountain was relatively close to the path to get to the demon god's territory. You could see the demon god's territory from the top of the mountain. And Muyong was lost for words for a moment. It's big. It was endlessly big. No words escaped his mouth besides that. Sky Lord. It was a huge snake. It could probably touch the sky, or ever go past it. Muyong could feel a sense of greed from it, that it would devour everything. It was similar to the authority of greed within anguish. He never thought the Sky Lord was that sort of a monster. Well, it had to be that sort of a monster to try and stop Diablo. As Diablo's flame was like the source, unless it was something like the power of greed that could suck everything in, he couldn't be stopped. Furthermore, he felt a few powers of authority. Lucifer's authority predator was telling him this. A creation that was made by not one, but a collaboration of a few demon gods' strength. Anguish cried as if it was hungry. But, Muyong shook his head. That snake didn't have an ego. It just ate up whatever was in front of it. If an ego existed, it wouldn't be able to stop Diablo. If that was the case, there was no need to meddle with it. Thud. Not soon after, a man appeared. It was Azul. Fully armed. The equipment he was wearing was not ordinary. There was equipment that would allow him to hold his own against Muyong. What a great army! Azul was alone. He admired Muyong's army, which was gathered under the shadow of the mountain. 60,000 in number. It wasn't a large number compared to a demon king's army. However, each of the 60,000 was unique. In fact, Muyong was also confident. It was incomparable to an average demon king's army. They wouldn't easily lose if they were to fight against the greatest demon king's army. That was something Azul also realized after seeing them. It was at that moment. I smell Dandelion. Murtyudun suddenly popped out after opening the gate to Hell Path. Murtyudun quickly circled around Azul as if he was mad. However, a name Murtyudun spoke bothered Muyong. Dandelion. Muyong was puzzled for a moment. Murtyudun had died in the past after being tricked by Dandelion. Despite his title as the King of the Sea, he died without even knowing he was killed. It was a death in vain. But, Azul's reaction was unusual. Don't associate me with that bastard. Azul had a sullen expression.